Absolutely shocking day, and the most amazing thing is this is a holiday week. I mean, everyone is getting ready for the 4th of July. Until about 2 hours ago, most of us were just had our feet propped up, and then our next guest, Jon Wilner, ruined lunch across the country. Jon Wilner joining us. Jon, who broke this story, good afternoon. Well done, and I'm going to put my feet up here and sit back and listen to you explain everything you know about how this came about. Good afternoon.
Well, Paul, I got to tell you, I don't know a whole lot, right? I did not know that this was coming until this morning. Now, there have certainly been a lot of rumblings about an eventual realignment wave, but I did not. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it right now. I thought we were going to have another 6-8 years, another cycle of media rights before this thing happened. But to me, it is clear, and I don't, this is just my own opinion. It is clear that Fox is behind this move, and I think it is reasonable to presume that this is Fox's counterweight to ESPN getting the SEC with Texas and Oklahoma. And now you got two 16-team leagues, and the two conferences have both scooped up the four universities that were really, going to bring value, right? I mean, USC and UCLA bring value because of LA and because of USC's tradition, UCLA basketball, Texas and Oklahoma obviously value. So the four that were out there are now gone, and the SEC and the Big Ten split them up. ESPN and Fox split them up, and so now we only got two super conferences. And if you're the other three, I mean, I think if you're the ACC, you're worried. If you're the Big 12, you're worried, and if you're the Pac-12, you are just dying.
Yeah, and Jon Kliavkoff, George Kliavkoff, the commissioner, celebrating his first year, and it seemed like he'd run a pretty good ship for a year until the earthquake came today. Does he have any moves? Is there anywhere he can go?
This is his 365th day on the job, and the first 364 were basically an exhibition. And now it gets real for him. What are his moves? That's a great question. I mean, the schools, I thought that Pac-12 was ever going to expand. Houston and maybe TCU would be great picks for a bunch of reasons. Houston's gone. I mean, if you're the Pac-12 now, I think you probably have to go back to the Big 12 and say, hey, how about a merger, right? I mean, 22-team league that's got some kind of affiliation and one giant media rights deal. Because the Pac-12 does not have equivalents of Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston out in the Pacific time zone. Because San Diego State, that's already part of the Pac-12's media market. So they don't really have very many options. And I think that maybe a merger is the best if the Big 12 and Fox and ESPN would be willing to orchestrate it.
Jon, you know this league better than anyone, but as you look at what's left, I mean, when you say after USC, I mean, obviously there is Oregon, Washington, Stanford. I mean, these are blue chip schools at various times. Do you sense that any or all or some could say, you know what, we're going to. We just didn't know about this one in time for today.
Well, I think that they're certainly going to be looking, especially Oregon and Washington, right? I mean, and of those two, Washington, right? Washington's got a pretty good media market, is a good school, good football program. I think Washington might have some value but you got to have somebody willing to open the door. I don't know if the Big Ten is done. You might think that I kind of think they're done, but I'm not positive. But I would have to think that every school in the Pac-12 right now, remaining school, is trying to scramble to figure out what their options are and whether the league is going to stick together or it's every man for themselves, which would be really very unfortunate for intercollegiate sports out in the western third of the country.
I mean, I know you were early on here. I mean, you broke the story a little bit over 2 hours ago. When and how do we expect, or you expect, Kliavkoff to respond, or where is he right now?
Well, I think they're trying to figure out, some get the details out from USC and UCLA. This whole thing was done, very, very quietly, incredibly quietly, and he's got to figure out when are those schools leaving, and is there any chance they would reconsider? Could politics intervene? Right? That's one thing that I think we don't know 100% is the politics, right? Because Cal and UCLA share a university system, and is Gavin Newsom or Sacramento politicians going to somehow get involved and block UCLA's move? I don't know if they can, but that's something that probably people are wondering about. So that's what he's got to do. Then he's got to start thinking about what his options are. And my guess is he's got to get on the phone with Fox, ESPN, and either CBS and anybody else, because, as you know, a lot of this stuff starts with the TV networks.
And, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about the Pac-12 close to a deal. I mean, that's been, and what kind of deal, I'm not really sure, John, but what is up right now, and what could be restructured, what could have been restructured until today, and what can still be restructured?
Oh, for their media rights?
Yes.
They were going to start negotiations as soon as the Big Ten finished theirs. And the Big Ten was supposed to finish, there was I don't know if you remember, but there was a report that Big Ten was going to finish their media rights negotiations by the end of May.
Right.
And then all of a sudden there was a delay. Then there was like this pause. And I have to think that the pause was Fox saying, you know what, let's try to get the LA schools. So now I would imagine the Big Ten's going to wrap things up here in the next month or two. And the Pac-12, in theory, would start to negotiate formally with ESPN and Fox and others. But I don't know what they're going to do now. I mean, the whole thing is blown up, and Pac-12 is going to have to find a major network that is going to be willing to pay a lot of money for schools that aren't tethered to Los Angeles. Right? That's the biggest thing. The nation's number 2 media market is no longer in the Pac-12 footprint.
John, we know how valuable USC is. I mean, it's hard to. We made a big deal about Oklahoma and Texas, but USC is on the same tier with Notre Dame and Alabama and the biggest of all time. What does UCLA bring to the table?
Well, I mean, a lot of what UCLA brings to the table is the connection to SC, because I think that, the Big Ten probably wanted to have 2 schools, right? They keep it even, help with travel partners and all that kind of thing for all the sports. And I think that there was probably a lot of, it would have been hard for USC to leave UCLA behind politically in Los Angeles, I think. And the Bruins bring, one of the most storied basketball programs of all time, and certainly UCLA football has the potential to be an elite program. It hasn't been in a long time, but I think the biggest thing UCLA brings is that they're kind of tied the waist with USC,
okay.
and the Big Ten needed to, and SC probably I don't know if USC wanted to leave on just themselves, but it makes a lot more sense when it's both of them.
Let me go back to what you said a minute ago, because it was quite a significant statement about a possible merger. Trying to piece all this together now that the Big 12 is I don't know how you can get around other than that. It seems like they just added fat with Cincinnati and BYU and Houston, I guess, and UCF. I mean, they're all good in their own ways, but in terms of national brands, you can quibble and argue, but how would that look? 10, 12 years ago, as you well know, those 2 leagues almost merged, and it was all about Oklahoma and Texas. Now they're gone.
Now they're gone, right. How would it look? I mean, that's a great question. It would be 22. I mean, maybe you add 2 more and get to 24, right? No, it would be 24.
Yeah.
So I keep forgetting how the Big 12 is going up to 14 and then down to 12. It's hard to keep track of. And the other question is the Big 10 going to keep its name, or is it going to go to the Big 16, right? I mean, it's so hard to keep track of how many schools are in each of these leagues. But I would think a 2014 affiliation, right? Something where there's cross the schedules are kind of merged, and that's a lot of people, right? Let's remember, SEC, Big Ten, ACC, those are basically, that's the eastern half, a third of the country. There's a lot of football fans and a lot of TV eyeballs, in Big 12 and Pac-12 footprint, and I think a TV network would be interested in some kind of, umbrella league, but I don't know the specifics. I haven't thought much about.
John Wilner, reporting this earlier today, a bombshell that has literally turned the college football world upside down. John, many, many thanks. I know it's been a busy day, and we deeply appreciate you making time for us.